All right. So I'm rolling, John. So pleasure to meet you, and welcome everyone. It's Greg Sullivan here with Jay Shetty and SuperLogical TV. We've got ex-FBI X-Man John DeSouza here. Great to meet you today, and thanks for coming.
Hey Greg, it is great to be here with you today. I am so happy to be on SuperLogical with you, and this is an awesome opportunity for me to be able to speak to your audience and speak to you people about the things that really matter. Thank you.
Cheers. Well, I think you've got an amazing history and the counterterrorism unit and the paranormal desk. I think you've got tons to talk about. We just our connection here was through. I live in Japan full time, and you've had a series of books come out with voice and really amazing full color profile and great way to present your work. What are you going to be? What out of all the books you've done with Japan, what are some memories that stand out for you?
Well, what I love about my books released in Japan, which are the Truth is Out There, Volume 1, Truth is Out There, Volume 2, Truth is Out There, Volume 3. It's about my cases that I've worked over the years. For the FBI, I worked many paranormal cases. I worked many cases where we were trying to figure out this alien phenomena, this UFO phenomena, and what the origins of it was. And so that's what I kind of deal with in my books, because the truth of the phenomena is very different from what Americans believe it is at this point. And I've always found that the Japanese people are much closer to the truth on UFOs and alien visitors, simply because the Japanese people are much more connected to their supernatural roots. They don't have this artificial division from supernatural reality that Americans have. And that's why it's very important to speak to the Japanese people about this. People that understand it much better than Americans do.
Yeah, that we appreciate all the work you've done, and for sure your resume brings a lot of responsibility and respect to the field. Obviously there are naysayers in every country. How have you changed in the last 2 years? We're all in a new boat, so to speak, in a new dimension. How have you kind of let's take it from the get-go, the most updated stance. A lot of conferences have been canceled, going online. The whole research scene and all the media formats are changing. How are you dealing with that, and what are your plans for 2022?
It's hard to deal with a lot of these shifting realities that are going on because of the supposedly this COVID reality that we're dealing with these days. But we still have to reach out to people. We still have to speak to people because these things go back to the central philosophy of SuperLogical. These things you cannot understand them in the rational mind. It's just not there. You need people like me, like you, to reach out to people and to make them understand they need to close their rational eyes and feel with the spirit and understand with the spirit the realities that we're living in here every day with alien visitors that are becoming more and more visible every day. These tic tacs that are showing up everywhere, really. And that, you have certain times, you have governments that are claiming, no, those are ours, or sometimes they're claiming they're not ours. And we know that, but whatever they're saying, the one thing we always know is that the governments are lying. They're lying. If they say they belong to them, then they're lying about that. If they say they don't belong to them, they're lying about that. And that's why we need to understand these realities. We need to reach out for these realities, and we need to contact each other, whether it's through online seminars or through any other means possible. Even if we have to get on our phones and do telephone groups, it doesn't matter. But we have to keep trying to reach out to each other to communicate these realities so that people can understand these things better. Because these things in 2022, I promise you, and I promise your audience, in 2022, these realities are going to burst open. They're going to burst forth all over us here on the earth. in my one of my books, The Extra Dimensionals, I have a series of 10 predictions that are in the back of the book that are coming true right now. And I would need an entire seminar to explain to people how these things are being fulfilled. We're seeing things from the moon, which I believe is an artificially orbiting object that is filled with some kind of life. And it's not biological life like we understand biological, but it is some kind of artificial intelligence life. And it is something that has kept us off the moon for many, many decades. Wow. Why? Because it went around to all the nations, and it said to the nations, the Soviet Union, it said to the United States, shut down your space programs. Stop coming here right now. And we did. And now we have certain nations like India and China saying that they're landing things on the moon. And I don't really believe it. I really don't. You see, it's easy to create kind of film that says, you're doing this and that. But the reality of it, you have to look as an investigator, and you have to look at it very carefully. So that's what I believe.
That is intense, John. You got me with goosebumps here because, with regarding, you mentioned the moon right there, the Tonga eruption. I did an entire live stream here in Japan called the Ascension eruption. A lot of people love to spin these as conspiracy events like the deep state and this and that. And I'm saying, these are cosmic events. And we got the message that that Tonga eruption, which was very unnatural, with the whole tsunami and everything, like the tsunami hit Tonga before the eruption, some witnesses say. And we got the message that had something to do with the quote-unquote moon matrix.
Right.
And so there you go. So we just connected 2 points right there. Totally.
Right. And they're making a movie about it now because Hollywood works very closely with the cabal to show the things that are happening. And now they're making a movie about exactly what I predicted called Moonfall. I think it's Moonfall or something like that. Right. And it shows artificial life cracking open in the moon and leaving the moon and coming to Earth for some reason. I don't know why, but we're living through a period where not just conspiracies are being revealed, but there are conspiracies inside of other conspiracies that are being revealed. And I'll give you a quick example. Look, one of the predictions I made in my book, The Extra Dimensionals, is that in the back is that there would be entire towns, cities, towns that would be abducted, disappeared. In other words, that the abduction phenomena would go up to such an event, such a scale, that entire towns would disappear. Well, here in the United States, we've had a couple of different phenomena where entire towns were destroyed or kind of disappeared. I'll give you one example. About a year ago, we had this incredibly mysterious, very odd, unnatural fire that happened in a town called Paradise, California. Destroyed the entire town, supposedly. And, and the thing is, the media always gives false death counts because these stories have been arranged beforehand. Right. And so the media, they always say, 50 people were killed or some nonsense like that. But if you look at the devastation, the entire town disappeared. The whole town disappeared. And so I believe Paradise, California, what happened there is one of the examples of an entire town disappearing with a cover story, which was the fire, this weird fire that came up out of nowhere and was unstoppable and destroyed the entire town. But I believe that town was disappeared. And a lot of people believe that now. A lot of people now are saying that Paradise, California, for some reason had positive alien entities in it that were working to help us as a people. And that's why the cabal targeted it to be destroyed and to be disappeared. Right. And it's just crazy stuff.
Mind-blowing, yes. It goes so deep. They had the picture of the lasers that started the fire, like the laser technology and all that stuff. Yeah, the sun.
Right.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
Yeah, well, oh man, it's so the rabbit hole goes so deep. What you mentioned there about staying connected, that ties into my next question, or my next comment is like, I call it the word that comes to me is like the bulldozer effect. And even for us who've been doing this for years, it's really mind blowing how hardcore the spin has gotten. You know, with of course the whole January 6th and all this, the entire Trump administration and all this stuff, like how he was targeted. Not to get into any politics, but I'm just saying, like, the environment. It reminds me of my favorite sci-fi movie, which is a late '60s classic by French New Wave pioneer Jean-Luc Godard called Alphaville. And it's you should see it if you haven't. And in Alphaville, the AI, it's an AI dystopian sci-fi flick, and and what they do is they start eliminating words from the dictionary. So it's just like it is now, like the hashtags, like the keywords that we need to just, quickly reference certain important topics. Those have been targeted like almost scalarly, and they've become taboo. So even amongst researchers, is like, I better not mention this lest I be blacklisted or blackballed or get cut out of the loop.
Absolutely.
So the communication control has just really turned up so intensely in the last 2 years. How have you been dealing with that or feeling that or whatever?
It's very difficult to deal with because all the tech giants are so hell bent on the censorship and controlling speech and controlling what we say and all this, things that we never thought could happen in America, in the United States at all. And yet here it is, and it's happening. And always the people who are trying to control speech are always the bad guys, always. And those of us who are trying to fight for freedom are always the good guys. That's just the way history has always shown it. And so, I'm trying to always come up with fresh language, fresh ways of referring to things, fresh ways of saying things so that we escape the censors to a large part. And it's difficult. It's hard. It's a lot of work, but we got to do it.
It's like being a rapper. Super nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I consider myself kind of a rapper too.
The NLP effect. Yeah, for sure. Well, we could go down, any of these channels. I wanted to let me cut to something local in your area. I do, I've gone big time, of course, into the UFO research and had a lot of contact experiences myself, and I guide tons and tons of people here in Japan to their own different experiences. But once in a while, we get asked to clear and heal, damaged land and stuff that refers to your research as well with these kind of haunted spots. Like, the ETs with their technology can actually heal and remove what we might call disincarnates or disgruntled, astral beings, and kind of like damaged and violent energies. One of the things that, believe it or not, when I started going to Arizona, after our first trip to Sedona and Flagstaff, for some reason my guides brought in the message about that. I think it's a mine or some sort of ancient Indians, a Native American site and outside of Phoenix, and that's a real, like, there's been a lot of lost hikers and everything. I'm sure there's a lot of lore around that. It's not South Mountain. It's in the other direction, in the west, I think. What kind of info do you have about that place?
We have many places like that, and we have those places throughout Tucson, Sedona, throughout Bisbee, Arizona, and many other areas. And the reason is because there's a lot of Indian graveyards, murdered Native peoples throughout all of Arizona, and that carries with it a lot of power for good and for evil as well. So both angles exist, and they're real. They're real. I mean, we have like one of the things that people do here, and it's real. They start these recovery health centers. Recovery health centers for the spiritual health of people, and that's because they draw on the good energy from the earth, the shamanic type energy, and it's real. It works, and people have like incredible, miraculous healings here in this area. But then there's always the bad side as well. There's also malevolent spirits as well, here that can lead to a lot of destruction and a lot of negative experiences as well. And that happens all throughout here. I mean, all throughout these areas as well. And I'm always interested in investigating that kind of thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's like part of the spiritual mastery that, part of the Earth's evolution is that we could heal that damage. I think they call it psychometrize, that the wounds get psychometrized into the Earth grid. So that's all healing too now. So a lot of sensitive people have been feeling those ancient wounds coming up. I think 2021, there was some super heavy kind of like collective trauma releasing, and what they call like the star seeds and light workers of the world, where we process that through the body, and so it really can knock you out. So having context for that is really helpful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The context is important, and the reality and the understanding that we ourselves are also focal points for consciousness as well. And it's our consciousness is what gives the power to whatever these miraculous healings, these helping people to get better spiritually or otherwise as well. And it's really, really important to remember that. That's the reason why Jesus Christ said, every time Jesus healed somebody, he always used a weird phrase. He always said, go ahead, your faith has made you well. Your faith. He never said, I healed you, I did it, it's me. He always said, your faith has made you well. And that's a very interesting thing to remember always when we're doing this work as well.
That's a good point. Excellent point. Well, I know your other book, Clear Hearers. That's a great word, because this what I've seen is like when getting involved with the spiritual community, it's a lot of it becomes very it's been very subjective, psychics and mediums but when we go into this interdimensional phenomenon, the actual 5D and above, so to speak, the ET world, that actually demands a much higher level of kind of accuracy and clarity. So I love that word and the title of your book. Can you describe to the viewers what that means to you? And
the Clear Hearers it's the most important thing I've ever written. It's the revelation to people of how they can communicate with and how they are constantly helped by this version of themselves that lives in eternity, that is actually already standing in the breath of God. And it is a version of you that is so far advanced of you that you would have a very hard time recognizing it. And the only real connection you have to it is love. The fact that it loves you, it still cares about you, and it still tries to help you in any way it can. But it's a little like an elephant trying to remember what it's like being an ant. So there's some difficulties there with communication and things like that. And that's what I try to show people and to help people with. And the other reason why Clear Hearers is so important is because we are presently living through a period when the governments and the cabal are using what we call voice-to-skull technology in order to counterfeit this communication from your higher self to you, and trying to pretend that it is. As a matter of fact, very recently, we had both David Icke and Cliff High, two men that I follow on a consistent basis. Yep. They both said the same thing. They both said, Icke and Cliff High both said that the cabal is using voice-to-skull technology to send out messages to people that basically says the same four words: just take the vax, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Just take the vax, it'll be fine. And they've had people reporting to them that they keep hearing this phrase in their head as if they're saying it to themselves.
Yeah.
And yet they know it's not them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So that's one of the things that's predicted in the Clear Hearers that is going on right now. And it's being used on many other occasions than that. So that's why we need to figure out recognizing the real clear hearing voice, what it is, what it sounds like, what it feels like. That's the most important thing about Clear Hearers.
Yeah, that's so amazing, and the stream of consciousness has all that's awakened the inner sensitivity, and there's a lot of other people's and most people interested in this topic are actually what you might call empaths, I find, and so they're taking on other thought streams from relatives or people around them.
Yeah.
And it overrides their own stream of consciousness. So yeah, going in and then connecting into the higher realms. That's even the pipe is very small at first. So we I'm working on a book about that kind of training right now. Myself, I know exactly what you mean because I've had people in our network here in Japan who were bloggers and then were trying to be derailed by remote influencing, and they could actually see who they saw military like they said this is not an ET, they said it's a American military person. And then also for the last year, John, last night was pretty intense. I've been getting hit with this sort of whatever scalar. It's really comes in the middle of the night, and man, I had experienced it once or twice, when I brought a researcher to Japan, or when things were really, really intense. But it has been nightly for the last year, where this sort of scalar attack, ELF, you might call it, coming at the spine and pelvis, and it's been so consistent that I actually threw my back out in December. So it's been a really intense. Yeah, so that sort of like subtle programming is totally real. I know exactly what you mean.
Absolutely, it is. It's absolutely real, and people have to be prepared for it, and they have to learn. They have to learn how to contend with it, to recognize it, and to use discernment, spiritual discernment, so that they know when they're being attacked. You got to be able to know that, and then you can address it. And then you got to take measures to protect yourself, because you can. I mean, I have charms that I use for constant protection that I keep close to my body. I always keep close to my body, and if I am experiencing an attack, I will actually pull these charms out and use them in order to counter the effects that I'm being attacked with, and it works. It works because my faith makes me well.
That's really key, yeah. How do you find, speaking of which, I'll bring up a topic that's sort of, speaking in these sort of like weaponized spiritual agendas, what we're talking about, we have a very, I think, neutral perspective, like we're ready to accept anything that's out there, and a true researcher should be, willing to accept any case and apply their reasoning or their understanding to it. But we've had a kind of a flame up in the last few years in Japan here of sort of the what you might call the secret sort of magical thinking, and what they now call spiritual bypassing, which is there's no need to focus on any of that dark stuff. Let's just focus only on the light, and you know how like the cabal has manipulated that, or the powers that be, the powers that were, have manipulated that very cleverly. So that sort of it's a giant excuse, so that they say like, don't blame such and such, it's all your fault. So the law of attraction element comes in, that everything you're experiencing is your own making. And on what the guides, my AT guides told me, is the way to deal with that is to tell people that is true on a personal level, like your personal sphere. Because a lot of spiritual and New Age info is based on personal wellness, and it's a self-help, has a root in self-help, but it's not the case on the macro, and that's what we're talking about. So we're looking at the macro level, the entire planet, and the history of humanity, hidden history of humanity, that's totally different. So do you understand what I mean? Have you heard about spiritual bypassing? It's sort of like the people who don't want to look at any of the shadow. Have you ever encountered that?
No, because I do believe that where attention goes, focus grows, and so you can't pay too much attention and deference to dark spiritual forces. I think it does increase their power. I think if you can withdraw attention and focus from them, I think it does help. It does help your situation. And yeah, the macro matters. The macro absolutely does matter. But you're still an individual within this situation. And you're an individual consciousness, so you have to tend to that. You have to tend to your individual consciousness first before you can help others. Very much like the person who gets the oxygen mask in the plane. You can't be putting them on other people's faces until you put it on your own first.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do believe in that. And yeah, the dark spiritual forces are real, and there are times when we have to contend with them. But then we have to find solutions then, real solutions for contending with them, and use those solutions always, all the time.
That's excellent. Yeah. What I didn't one piece I missed. Sorry, there with the introduction of that question was that in Japan, like you know, a lot of people who are promoting this sort of control agenda, often, as you know, doors open and they're all of a sudden all over the headlines. They're on billboards everywhere they really shouldn't been or weren't before. So we have that happening here in Japan, where it's like, who the hell are these people? Who is this guy? And then what they're espousing is, you know, it really becomes, it makes our job even more difficult, where it's like, you know, if you don't, you know, it becomes a new meme, you know, like this meme creation, the instant creation of kind of control memes. So that's something I've been contending with. So here I am trying to make a book with the same different publisher than you work with, but and then this publisher promotes this sort of this real popular speaker, and then all of a sudden we're in their shadow, although we've been doing it way longer. And it's like, here comes finally a chance to share our deepest truth, but we've got this sort of like, you know, noise running in the background. It's like, wait a minute, what do you mean, Gregory? What do you? I thought that no one says that. What are you talking about? And it's like, you know, it's like, so that I've been kind of painted into a corner. That's part of this whole bulldoze effect that I've been talking about for a moment.
Oh yeah, and you know, that's a real thing. It's a real thing, and you know, we have to contend with that stuff all the time. And the best thing we can do is, I think, is just to appropriate and use the messages of those other speakers and show how we are in alignment with what they're doing as well. And we're, you know, and it's and we're all in a cooperation here, you know, as much as possible. That's the best way, I think, to contend with that sort of thing.
Yeah, a good point. Okay, well, yeah, that's great. We've covered some real amazing points here. How have you, lastly, like, what do you see, I mean, Tucson, what an amazing skies you got down there. How, have you ever tried the C5 protocol, or do you have the app or whatever? Do you see ships yourself at night?
Yeah, I have my own protocols that I use through my own meditations and my own work, because I've always kind of been in consistent contact with alien visitors in general. Sometimes, usually for good, and so it's something I've always done on my own, and yeah, I expect that contacts will be increasing in 2022 for everyone, not just for people who use protocols, but for everyone. And people are going to be going nuts, reaching out for you and for me to find out what's really going on. And because at that point, it's going to be too late for them to educate themselves. Yeah. It really is, and they're going to have to run around in a panic and find people who know what's really happening. Because at that point, if they're still listening to the governments, they're going to be in big trouble, big trouble, because the government's not going to tell them anything good or anything true. That's where we are.
Very key, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing with all the with all the narrative is just crumbling. You know, this whole Spotify Joe Rogan thing is really flaring up. You know, although the real researchers and the people speaking the truth have been painted in their corner, there's always like these rays of light that shine through, and you know, people are with a questioning mind are getting more and more. I think they're getting more and more stuff, great points to think about. One last comment here, John, is that you've I don't know if you've spoken about it in your books at all, but with the whole body double and you know, the two YouTubers who I did events with last year with Voice, Ichibe and Joestar.
Yeah.
How they've gone a lot about the gum people and the gum masks. Where did you first find out about that or encounter that? Because you know, the most obvious example is with Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea. I mean, the real guy is dead. He's gone. He has like 10 different doubles. It's so obvious. He disappeared from the media for like 8 months in 2020ish. And then all of a sudden, who the hell is this guy? Like this other complete double comes out. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah. Ichibe and Joestar, they know the real deal with all that stuff. These are a lot of doubles. Some of them are clones. Some of them are the rubber mask people, but that's not a good way to describe it. This is like a silicone that is actually alive. I think they used it on the old Mission Impossible movies, where it's like this silicone that's actually alive and molds itself with memory to your face, because they had the silicone program to remember what your face looks like, and then it programs itself so that it looks exactly like. It's crazy, but they've had this technology for a long time. And if you want to know the first persons that actually did this, it was way back in like 1960 when the Cabal had their laboratories experimenting with this, with the creation of clones, straight up clones. You know, we're not talking. And the first successful globally known clone was, you may know, Paul McCartney's replacement when he died at a very young age with the Beatles. Yeah. And they already, or I don't know, maybe they killed him, I don't know. But whatever happened, they had a clone ready to replace him, who's actually taller than he was, and he had some little defects. It didn't have musical talent that he did. But they used it, and it went in there, and the thing is still alive today, pretending to be Paul McCartney. But after that, the Cabal started replacing a lot of political leaders and all this. But they're also using the rubber mask people, the other. Sometimes they use actors as well. They use actors with the silicone living masks as well, and that's really real. We just had this individual, Nancy Pelosi, replaced by someone that looked like 20 or 30 years younger than her. Yeah. Hillary has been dead for like a year and a half, and she's got half a dozen Hillarys running around for her. Sometimes in the same places at the same time, and the media doesn't care. Trump has he has a double, and we don't know whether it's a clone or a rubber mask person or what it is, but Trump has a clone that is at the Mar-a-Lago golf resort. Yeah. It's this guy who's a lot heavier than he is, but the face is exact. I mean, the face is exact. And the reporters know that that's not really Trump, but they don't care. They don't care because they get to criticize him and they get to say, oh, look, he's playing golf all day long. That's all he does. Yeah. And really, that is all the clone does. He just does that all day. And people don't care. It's becoming kind of like a joke at this point. All of our political leaders. Justin Trudeau showed up in a video the other day where he looked completely different from how he's looked in the past. Yeah, now we're thinking that Trudeau has been maybe arrested and maybe he's been replaced by a clone as well, like Governor Newsom was several weeks ago. Yeah. Newsom of California was disappeared. He disappeared for 10 days. Yeah, and then miraculously, this guy shows up who's pretending to be Newsom. Anyway, I could go on with that forever. So that's a real thing, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. They're using more and more of these clones. So, but it will be exposed. It will be exposed eventually, and we will have all these clones exposed, because what's going to happen is all of their deeds, all of the things that they signed as political leaders are going to be taken away. they're going to be just disintegrated, and everything that they did is going to be disappeared. And so that's why it's going to be eventually, it's going to be revealed with time.
Yeah, I mean, talk about hidden in plain sight. I mean, yeah, there are amazing videos comparing the original Paul versus Fall and his playing style as a lefty bass player, and how level is different. And you know, when the wife left him, she said cryptically, like, you lie, I can't believe how much you've lied to me, and then what was it? You know, recently, Dark Journalist on YouTube. You know, he did the UFO State of the Union, and he talked about how Newsom and Trudeau have kind of gone past their cabal expiry date, so they've been taken out, and you know, there was a backlash against their heavy mandates. So that sort of test in Canada and California and New York kind of flopped. And then, of course, obviously, with all of Biden's cognitive questions, you know,
we're right now we're on about, I count the third or fourth Joe Biden from like 20 years ago. We're up to like number 4 at this point. And the guys don't look anything like the original Joe Biden. If you just, all you have to do, the pictures are out there. You just go and you look. You can't shorten a person's jaw. You can't do that. Yeah. So it's like the Bidens have been copies for a long time.
Hidden in plain sight. Yeah, that's a really key topic. Are you going to blog more about that in the future, or is that coming out in a video?
Yeah, I'll be definitely talking about that, because the Japanese audiences are really interested in that, and so that's something that we need to develop more, for sure, as far as proof positive about the clones and the copies and the doppelgangers and all that. That's an important topic, because it shows that we're basically being asked to continue living in a fantasy world.
Yeah.
And that's what they're asking us not to recognize, that this is a fantasy world, and that our leaders are mostly clones and copies, because they want to maintain the power in this small group of globalist leaders. That's what they do. So yeah, that's a very important topic to develop in the future.
Yeah, I would say they've gone a little bit too far with the Kennedy is still alive, and recently a picture came out with John Lennon still alive. That there is this info mixed in with that, like with the fake pictures, but yeah.
And those are CIA shops that are just in charge. They sit around and they're just in charge of creating disinfo. Yeah. Whenever people start finding out, hey, they're finding out too much about the clones and the copies. Yeah. Let's generate some crap. Let's generate some stuff. And so they do, and it gets distributed, and that happens all the time. That's their only job, is to do that. And they do that also with paranormal events. Like whenever a real paranormal event occurs and is seen by a lot of people, they sit around and they create artificial copies of stuff to throw up into the atmosphere, and so that you won't pay attention to that and you won't look at it, and you'll say, oh, it's all fake. Yeah. So that's something that they do with CIA shops all the time.
They try and roll the entire topic into spin it up. Yeah.
Exactly.
So even the real researchers, that's what they call blowback, right? You know, the real researchers tend to get blowback. So you have to be super discerning. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Oh, you worked for the CIA. Okay, I got you.
No. Our channel got well, I've been trained by I've been trained telepathically by my support system, so I see through all those smoke screens. But my channel got a channel ban. I predicted the election results on 11/11 of 2019. I predicted the election results, and I was like the edge of my my abilities, but I also predicted the Afghan pullout, which was that, you know, although the election was going to be spun, that it was necessary for the left side now had to wake up, and that's happening right now. This last year was all about that, so I got a lot of blowback, and my channel was then put on a shadow ban, so it's really was pulled down. Last quick topic, John, and we'll wrap up here.
I'm ready.
I commend you about the. It's a little bit of a taboo one, and but the Atacama humanoid. You are one of the few people who your topic in the Sharon book, fake science. I commend you for supporting Dr. Greer on that, because even the people here who kind of like were supposed to be on his side really spun that and went with the what is it, the fake academic journal. It's a bit of a taboo topic, but had you encountered any other like little, I don't want to call them mummies, but relics like that?
Absolutely. And Dr. Greer, if he was to take his correct place in history, he is the first real, I don't like to say it, but the first real scientist. I don't even like that title anymore, but he's the first real scientist to reveal non-human indigenous life on Earth. And he did it. He's the one who revealed it. Unfortunately, in 2012, he made the mistake of still trusting scientific authorities, in particular at Stanford University Science Department, and he trusted them to give further verification to his discovery, to what he brought to the world, and he handed it all off to them. And and I investigated it after the fact, but I came to the same conclusions that Dr. Greer did. This was genuine, non-human, indigenous life, apparently, here on Earth. And it was, it wasn't an alien, because that's the trick the media, worldwide media does, is to always say everything's an alien. Oh, that's an alien. You're saying that's an alien. Well, no, we're not. We're not saying that. We're just saying it's not human. Yeah. And it obviously was not human. And those were all the preliminary findings that Dr. Greer made, and that Stanford confirmed. Yeah. Was that it was correct. It was non-human life of some sort, biological life here on Earth. And that's what they found. But, then, as scientists always do, they did the fakery, and they did the fakery later, and they did the long DNA chain tests and so forth, which if they really showed what they said they did, they would make those public. They never did. Yeah. Why didn't they? Because it doesn't show anything that they're saying, It's like when these labs, when these people turn in, they get samples of Bigfoot, tissue and hair, and they turn it into the labs. And they're like, well, the labs aren't going to lie. Yeah. Well, no, the labs have to lie. Because why? Because they get licensed every year by the state. Yeah. And the state's not going to renew their licenses if they say, oh, Bigfoot is non-human life that we found. We've got these tissue samples. There it is. No, labs lie. They lie every day. Yeah. Otherwise, they can't keep their licenses. And that's what we're finding out here. And when I was at Gaia Channel, when Gaia Channel came up with the Nazca mummies. Yeah. Again, genuine, non-human life that was discovered. And they had the DNA samples. They showed that those things were real. But what did they do? They went to the labs, all the different labs. And what are the labs going to do? The labs are going to fake their results. No lab is going to be the first lab to say, hey, we found non-human life. Here it is. This is it. It's some kind of bipedal creature that is not human, but it is here and it's real. And here it is. They're not going to do that. Yeah. So anyway, yes, there have been many, many instances. As long as you have labs, you will have laboratories and science departments. You will have lies told to people because that's their job. Their job is not to find new knowledge for you. Their job is to cover up knowledge and keep you inside the scientific mold that they have created. If anything doesn't fit in there, they're not going to find it. That's it. So, and it's very sad, but this con has worked for hundreds of years since Galileo. It has worked. And so they're trying to keep this up. And now this has come to its logical conclusion where science is trying to kill people at this point. And the medical industry is trying to kill people and commit these terrible genocides as well. So I don't know if I can mention that, but that's where we are now.
That's it. We saw it coming. We know we were told it was coming, and now it's here, and it's we're all in the thick of it. So but thank you. Those were just some key points that I think people will be interested in because it was case closed on the positive side in a lot of our minds, but then all these channels and then media attack it so violently. that even the fans will start to doubt themselves. So yeah, thanks.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, John. I appreciate it, and I look forward to having you again for our Japanese festival, YouTube Fest this year, and
Awesome.
we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch again soon. Thanks a million, and I'll link up
Oh,
all your info in the in your website in the description of the video.
good deal, Greg. Thank you so much. It's great being on SuperLogical.
Cheers, man.
Good
Thanks.
stuff. Good stuff.